Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon and good night, wherever you might be. Today's show is brought to you by threesomes. Threesomes for the adventurous woman who has decided that she's had enough of unsatisfying sexual encounters. Maybe for your 50th birthday, you'd like to have an adventure, bar none, maybe bar two or three, for a threesome. Remember, if you've been almost there but not quite, one too many times, if you've been thinking that about your ex while you're with your next, or maybe if you just needed a little bit more and they're just done and you just needed a little bit more time to get where you needed to go, or if you have a fantasy of just finishing, a threesome might be right for you, especially as a woman of a certain age has certain needs that can no longer be met by a man of a certain age. A threesome might be just what the doctor ordered. Remember, threesomes, it's not just for freaks anymore. Brought to you by a bunch of women who don't give a good goddamn about your sexual double standards.
Yeah.
I
Andrea.
with Chuck, would it be appropriate to say that Kappas come in threes?
I,
As long as they come second.
in my MC Hammer voice, can't touch this.
Down, 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 down,
I know.
knee down, knee down. Welcome everyone to Steel Sharpens Steel. We are happy to be here in celebration of what we, among the melanated hues, like to refer to as the History Month of the Blacks or Black History Month. And so we are proud to be here with you. And what better way to celebrate the amazing women who are black than by celebrating Miss AJ, who, by the way, in addition to her multiple revelations about
Mhm.
her proclivities this week, has also been working with West African vendors of clothing during the COVID pandemic to open up supply chains so that these vendors who have been heavily impacted by the reduction in travel can actually sell their wares to American consumers. And so she has her own website that she's been promoting to help out those folks. And so we applaud her for just about everything that happened to her
Mhm.
this week and the weeks
I
past
applaud
because,
her for it all.
I mean, just go on with your bad self.
And please understand, her 50th birthday was a few years ago.
9.
Nine. This bad
Wow.
bitch, y'all. This woman is pushing 60 and looking better than all y'all 90s and 2000s babies out here. Y'all need to start drinking water and taking ginger and ginseng because she has the formula and we all want it. Hats
She
off to
does.
you. I mean, when I read that article about her having threesome on her 50th birthday, I was like, and then what? And how? Who was it? And where'd you find it? Birthday goals. Shoot, I'm trying to get like her.
So, can we talk, Sharon? You set the stage for why we have chosen to be attired as we are this evening. Can what can you say about National Wear Red Day?
Well, put the beautiful graphic up.
I sure will.
So, this is the American Heart Association tribute with Fierce Wear Red Give. As a person who had a near heart attack in 2014 and experienced the trauma of being probed and prodded, and um, I've become very heart conscious. No, I did not have a heart attack, Sharpies. It ended up being a anxiety attack. But after taking heart pills for a week, until they figured it out, Lord help me, became very conscious of heart health, right? And I'm an avid believer in 81 milligrams a day keeps the heart attack away.
Mm.
Mm.
So, in all of our grandness, and I have on full red, I'm just a little chilly. So I had to put on my scarf. Um, I just honor this day, especially for Black women or Black people as a whole. We are at the highest end of the rate scale. So the more you can afford yourself an education about heart health and not be afraid to examine yourself and know your risk level and ask about the benefits of an aspirin a day. Everybody can't do it, right? Everybody can't do it. And I'm not a medical professional, I'm an advocate for knowing your heart health.
Right. And just to add on to that, if you don't understand your own body and don't just decide, I'm just going to start taking a bare aspirin every day. There are types and ways that you should do that. You need to understand your own digestive tract. The reason I say this is my father did that for a number of years, longer than he should have. It led to like a bleeding ulcer in his stomach behind taking an aspirin every day because he never asked a doctor. He
Right.
just did it. And
Mine is
unfortunately,
medically prescribed.
yes,
Mine is medically prescribed.
go to a doctor. I cannot stress this enough. For all reasons, go to a doctor. Waiting until you're bleeding out of your eyes is not a time to say, let me set up an appointment for next month. Go to a doctor. Same way you get the oil change in your car, you should be getting maintenance on your body.
Absolutely. And I would just like to thank Sharon for the foresight of I was not aware of National Wear Red Day. And of course, black men and black women, but especially black men of a certain size, much less a certain age, are at risk for a higher incident of various cardiac related maladies, as well as high blood pressure and a bunch of other things, stroke, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you. Never let it be said that I would refuse the opportunity to attire myself in red, but
Never
not
give the
these.
four of us an excuse.
I was about to say, not these four people, not these two noops and two deltas at all. We could wear red every week. So, but let's turn the page right now to talk about some women who are definitely worth celebrating. When he was on the campaign trail, then presidential nominee Joe Biden affirmed that if he were given the opportunity, he would appoint the first black female justice to the Supreme Court. And with the retirement of Stephen Breyer forthcoming, he, as we noted last week, was making good on that promise. And although we were too happy to celebrate Justice Brown, some other people have had some slightly different takes on the nomination, not only of the person who as yet remains unnamed, but any black justice, any black judge who might rise to nomination to the Supreme Court. Joy.
So the problem that so many people seem unwilling to face in their own selves is the pervasiveness and the insidiousness of white supremacy. And white supremacy is not about, so white supremacy is different from racism. Racism is the violent actions that you take when you are a white supremacist. White supremacy, sometimes we get that mixed up, like into, the Klan and the Proud Boys, white supremacist groups, but they are engaging in racist activity. You can have a white supremacist mindset when you just think white people are just better for some intangible reason. And so many people in this country believe that to challenge white supremacy is to be seen as un-American. So that being said, you have people coming out of their mouth, if you put up that quote for me real quick, talking yin yang about whether or not a black woman could even be qualified. So Kennedy, out of course, Louisiana,
Of course.
who sits on the Judiciary Committee, number one, I want a nominee who knows the law book from a J. Crew catalog. He said upon exiting the lunch. Number two, I want a nominee who's not going to try to rewrite the Constitution every other Thursday to try to advance a woke agenda. So first of all, it was a white woman looking through the J. Crew catalog during the meeting. So I'm going to need you to get your colors straight, sir. Secondly, the woke agenda is not a thing. This is something that y'all been making up to scare rural white people. There is no woke agenda. There's an agenda for saving democracy, for saving the working class, for continuing to have a prosperous country. None of that is a woke agenda. That's just called being fair. And if you think being fair somehow disadvantages you, maybe you've been unfair this whole time. That's something y'all gonna have to reckon with. The one thing that really irks me is such a large part of this supremacist idea is built around not sharing. I don't want to share. I don't want to give y'all nothing. I don't want to. I want to take all my toys and keep them to myself, and I would rather burn it all to the ground than give you a piece of it, even though you helped me build it. And that's the problem that I have with all of them. Yes,
Chuck,
I wanted to snatch his little toupee off his little shiny head too. But go
Chuck,
ahead.
can you weigh in on the constitutionality of rewriting laws so that the vice president or local election officials or a secretary of state can undo the will of the people? Would that what sort of agenda would you call that, Chuck?
I would call that Rip Van Winkle sleeping agenda. That's the polar opposite of woke. I mean, that's just damn dumb, and it's completely unconstitutional, illegal, and that is the silly season that we're in. All of us on this panel and most of the sharpies who are watching, we're old enough to remember a time, whether you agreed with the GOP or not, they used to espouse such concepts as rule of law, personal
Mm-hmm.
responsibility, things of that nature. And what we're seeing over the course of the last 5 or 6 years, ever since they elected Donald Trump, nominated, and he named the president, this is not the party that we even remember 30 years ago. I mean, I used to think that Pat Buchanan was awful, and he was awful, but Pat Buchanan has nothing on the modern day Republicans. And I promise that if Ronald Reagan could be summoned back to earth at this point in time, he would not recognize, in some respects, he would, the abortion issue, certain fiscal conservative issues, he would. But the craziness that's out here now, he wouldn't recognize this. He'd be more in league, I believe, with Cheney and George W. Bush. And it almost makes my stomach turn to have to be talking in glowing terms about Dick Cheney and George W. Bush, because I certainly had my share of issues with them. But at the same point in time, they have, like, to like the old Happy Days comment, jumped the shark when Fonzie jumped the shark because they were just out of things to do on the show and it was time to kill the show. That's where they are now. They are jumping the shark on a day-to-day basis. And the last thing I want to say on that, Tom, is, so yes, what Donald Trump, as we hear more and more about what plans he had, it's kind of like Pinky in the Brain trying to take over the world, and you stop and realize, like, this dude really was in the White House thinking that he could do these things, and he just didn't have enough people around him to say, no, Mr. President, you can't. You're going to have to exit this place in 2 or 3 weeks, and there will be no stealing of the election machines, and you're not going to do this. Pence doesn't have the power to do what you're asking him to do. And so it's frustrating. It really is, because the real frustrating thing, this is what I want to get at, is that there are some intelligent Republicans. Now, we disagree with them on policy, but there are some really intelligent Republicans espousing this stupid shit. Okay. Like even John Kennedy, he's no dummy. His voice irks the hell out of me. I don't like listening to him talk, but he's not dumb. He's a Magna graduate from Vanderbilt. He's a Magna graduate from UVA Law. He owns a Phi Beta Kappa key. For those unaware, that's the most prestigious academic honor society in the world, right? And so he's not dumb, but he says dumb shit because it titillates the
It sells.
dumbasses, exactly, who follow the Republican Party these days. It's amazing to me.
Lest
I read a
anybody be
statistic.
confused, can you find the Supreme Court justice nominee
Mm.
in these J. Crew catalogs? I think maybe like in the trees in that
Mm.
middle skiing shot.
Isn't
Maybe
that
that's a black
Kavanaugh on the right
robe.
in the Timberlands?
It's hard for me to tell.
In the black sweater? I think that's Kavanaugh.
I,
Mm.
so lest we be confused, go ahead. Uh,
So
Joy.
one statistic that I read earlier this week: 52% of United States adults read at an eighth grade level or below.
Mm.
52%.
And
Half of them.
100% of the past presidents from 2020.
Father God.
I mean, I'm just saying. But when we think about it, so there, we talked about this movie before. Don't Look Up. It's on Netflix,
Mm.
and it's a great parody satire. It's sad, real life explanation of what goes on in our country right now. But The reason I bring this up is people don't want to read, but they also don't want to be told that they're stupid. So it's
Mm.
the perfect intersection of ego and insecurity that's making people act out the way they do. So they'd rather listen to what feels good and ignore anything that makes them feel bad about themselves, including other people who they perceive to be smarter than them. And so there's a line in the movie that Jonah Hill's character says in Don't Look Up. He goes, as he's pretending to be ostensibly like a Trump kid, right? And he's like talking to the unwashed masses. They're not like you, they're not you, the working poor. They're not the cool rich like us, they're the smart nerds. And he is separating them in those three groups: the working poor, the cool rich, and the smart nerds. And that's what has happened here is you have ostensibly the liberals, the Democratic Party, the woke crowd, or whatever, who look at science and data and can make objective decisions. Sometimes they have their own level of crazy, but then you have this working poor who look at people who have a certain level of education and resent them for that, but still want to be rich. So they look at the cool rich and support them because that's my hero, that's my idol, that's something I aspire to be. And somewhere in my mind, I've decided that if I support them, I can be them. And that's never going to happen. But it's just like wearing your favorite football player's jersey. You ain't never going to play in the NFL, but you're
Nope.
going to put that jersey on and pretend. But you still hate your teacher.
Yeah.
And so that's the same thing that's going on here. But because the unwashed masses are such a large population, and because the cool rich don't give a damn about nobody else, if you see the movie, you'll understand how that plays out eventually too. We are headed for trouble unless the nerds can learn how to speak stupid and get them to understand and learn to vote in their own best interest. One last thing, and then I'm gonna be quiet for a second. I was talking to somebody about universal health care and social safety nets and socialism as a whole, and why it's working in so many different parts of Europe, and they won't do it here because in so many different parts of Europe they have a homogenous society. They all look the same. They don't have a significant portion of people of color or different ethnicities um, to speak of. The UK is the next closest, and all of their minorities only make up 10% of the population. We're over here kicking around 44%, right? So the majority, the white majority, they don't want to support any social programs because in their mind, they're always giving their tax money to the unworthy. And they don't have that problem in Europe, which is why they adopted better universal healthcare policy, so on and so forth over there, because they don't have that mental break of, I don't want to pay for these people I don't like. But here we're such a big part of the society. They would rather, again, I'd rather burn it to the ground than give you anything.
Yeah.
Uh, we have talked about our Supreme Court justices, and next up is
I
a
would love
different.
to comment on the Supreme Court justice.
Well, and that's why I was trying to give Sharon a chance to talk about this before we segue into our next segment. So please, Sharon, weigh in on. I know that you have a couple of nominees that you're looking at outside of Justice Katanji. So tell us about this interesting moment in Biden's administration and the choice that is facing not only him, but the very narrow Senate, which currently is down one vote because we have a senator who is ailing and is not in the chamber.
Well, politically, that's going to give South Carolina a lot more leverage, especially if that senator is incapable of casting his vote, because they can bet on Lindsey Graham at a minimum to be supportive if he gets to bring something home. But I want to share something statistical in this moment when we're talking about the ignorance of Kennedy, particularly, and Cruz added to his ignorance. Black women, only 6% of the population. And why are they entitled? Well, let me tell you why we're entitled. Since you decided to go to data, Ted Cruz, historically, there have been 115 Supreme Court justices with Amy Coney Barrett. Of those, 108 have been white men. So I was actually pretty skilled in math, right? So once you get to the number 100, right, And then you say we're only 6%. I think we're at least six Black women behind on the Supreme Court since you went there, Ted Cruz.
Mm.
And then of the 108 white men, only seven, one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, have been women and people of color, all in one little bucket, all in one. Thurgood Marshall and Clarence Thomas round off the Black male population, then leaves five women total, of which only one is a person of color, Sonia Sotomayor, who was appointed by the single Black president. So, since you want to go statistics, Mr. Brilliant, supposed Ted Cruz,
Mhm.
I want my reparations and I want the next six justices to be Black women. Now,
Well, there's that part because
Yeah.
honestly, when you think about all of the justices, and you can even look in the Senate, when you think about how many senators have existed in this country, it's about time for Ted to permanently move to Cancun. How about we just go on ahead and stay down there, bro?
Yeah.
She now that's not fair. It is clear that Clarence Thomas has the concentration of melanin sufficient to be labeled as
oh yeah,
black, if not the cultural intelligence to align himself with the struggles that we face.
you
But
didn't see him. Samuel L. Jackson played him in the Django.
yeah, oh my goodness, Django Unjustices. Yeah, that was down in Candyland. Whoo, that was a lot. That was an awful
I'm just
lot.
getting started.
Yeah, yes, you is.
I'm gonna
Um,
spit this wine out on my good red shirt.
It'll
so why
blend.
don't you keep the ball rolling, Sharon? Because I know you have a lot to say about our next topic, which is Whoopi Goldberg.
Oh no, no,
Uh,
no. I have to breathe for this
oh,
one.
you need to breathe.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
I need the
so
historians to do their part, and then I'll
okay.
help y'all out.
Okay.
Um, so why don't we, Chuck? Would you like to tackle the Holocaust question and the nuances of the rather untidy remarks that Whoopi Goldberg made? First of all, let's make sure everybody understands. Whoopi Goldberg was commenting on The View, and the topic at hand was the graphic novel Mouse, which is a Holocaust treatise predicated with cartoon characters who are mice. So rather than show humans, they switched it up, and it was targeted at young adults. It was not. It was a way for young adults to kind of get into the concept of the Holocaust while not being as threatening by showing the actual human tragedy and cost. And so, as a result of that being offensive to uncomfortable DeSantis adherents,
Hmm.
some schools are pulling it off the shelves. And Whoopi made the comment that was rather inartful and said, she made a comment about the Holocaust not being about race. And so a bunch of people kind of jumped in her business about that. So, Chuck, can you provide some context for us as to what she might have been trying to allude to when she made that very brief comment?
Absolutely. It's one of those things where, again, I find it interesting that when we're in public spaces and people are trying to opine, some of the same people who would say, well, Donald Trump has his right to free speech, and this person has their right to free speech, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, and all of the craziness that we hear and see all of the time, particularly with Marjorie Taylor Greene, where she never skipped the chance to compare wearing masks to being, in the Holocaust. No one gets too upset about that. But here it comes. Miss Goldberg is on a 2-week suspension here from The View, because what she was trying to say basically is what those of us who, went through school, listened to sociological studies and what have you. Race is essentially a construct that really has a different connotation here in the United States of America than it does in other parts of the world, but also in parts of Europe. And so at the end of the day, she was basically trying to say, look, it was white folks killing white folks, so to speak. And to a great extent, she's right. But where she missed, from my perspective, from a historical perspective, is that when you look at what Adolf Hitler was into, when you check out Mein Kampf and you understand the whole master race, Aryans versus other peoples and what have you, the whole eugenics movement, it actually
Hmm.
goes back even to the concept of eugenics, which again got its start over here in the United States of America. For our Sharpies or our viewers who don't know, much of what Adolf Hitler believed in was stuff that he read and learned about that was going on here in the United States of America.
Hello.
And another historical tidbit that folks don't know: do you know what whose picture Adolf Hitler kept in the Reichschancellery behind his desk? It wasn't his mama and his daddy. It was of Henry T. Ford. Okay, and we can talk about that a whole other time in regards to how racist Mr. Ford was. So if y'all are pushing Fords and what have you, y'all need to learn a little bit more about the legacy of the founder of Ford Motor Company. But anyway, digressing back to Whoopi Goldberg, essentially her concern was you got whites killing whites, so to speak, with the Nazis killing white European Jews. Where she misses the mark some is Hitler hated everybody that he didn't believe to be of pure Aryan stock. So, for instance, if God forbid Nazi Germany had taken over the world, which is what he wanted to do, if they had gotten here to the United States, we would have been in concentration camps too. I'm talking about black people. Mexicans would have been in concentration camps. It wasn't a thing where he just, specifically was against one subset of whites, which is what Ms. Goldberg was trying to say. He was against everybody that wasn't, from his perspective, of pure Aryan stock, which is ironic because he was not of pure Aryan stock.
Well,
Another conversation for a whole other time.
Mhm.
mm-hmm.
He is straight Voldemort.
Yeah.
Love that ass.
Right. With
Yeah,
his partially Jewish self, but that's a whole other topic.
well, and the thing is that Ursula posted a question in the chat. Is being Jewish a religion, a race, or a culture? And so, if you want to unpack it, there are a couple of different ways to unpack it. But
The
from
short answer is yes.
it is, yeah, exactly. In to all three, and to the extent that there is a regional sect of Judaism, Ashkenazi Jews, that are what a lot of people think of as the most authentic Jews from
Right.
the Semitic
And
region.
you can get that on a 23andMe test as
Exactly.
well. So
Eight
there are
eight
DNA markers.
8.3% Ashkenazi Jew, and our family knows exactly where it came from.
Right.
But it is also a culture, and it is also a religion. All people who embrace Judaism are not of the Ashkenazi stock, and therefore are not equivalent in terms of a racial subcategory as the Ashkenazi are. And anyone can embrace Judaism, just like most faiths on the planet. If you want to learn the Torah and go through the classes, my cousin studied Judaism in college. And so that is the yes answer to that. Yes, it is a religion. But from a cultural standpoint, especially as it pertains to the way Jews have been persecuted throughout the various millennia, there's also a rich cultural heritage, which is not completely dissimilar to what black people faced in this country, which is partially to explain why there was so much complementarity and unity between blacks and Jews during our civil rights movement, because there were similarities that were seen between our two shared cultures in terms of what we were experiencing. So to answer you just as Joy said, and I'll let her wrap up, it is indeed all three, and because it is all three, it made Whoopi's point even more fractious.
And I think if but for a word choice, I think she would not be or not have had the struggle that she had. If she had said it wasn't about skin color,
Mm-hmm.
that's a whole different discussion.
Yeah,
Yes.
good point.
But when she said it wasn't about race, that absolutely it was about race, because even though it's not centered to our struggle and to our understanding as 2022 Black Americans, like you mentioned, the Ashkenazi Jewish community was a race, and they were seen and they were targeted and they were rounded up, along with homosexuals, along with
Hmm.
Roma and anything else that Hitler decided, I don't like that, and I need to bring it all
Undesirables.
down or experiment on them or what have you, treat them as animals, murder them by the millions. That was targeted, and it was that it did have a racial background to it. But standing them all in a line and taking a picture in black and white, you would not be able to tell one from the other from a skin tone, skin color standpoint. But you absolutely knew who was Jewish. And I think that's where she went wrong. Now, going on to what's happened since then, I appreciate the fact that she's met with different people. She's met with a few synagogues. She's tried to understand how she misunderstood that. She's given a real apology and not just that, I'm sorry if my words hurt anybody. She's like, I've learned and I have come to understand why what I said was wrong. And that's what I ask of anyone. If you want to make an apology, learn how you can be different after your apology. And she's done that. And so I appreciate what she's done. Even what did you say? The Anti-Defamation League came out in support of
Yes.
her actions. Like, we appreciate her wanting to learn. And ignorance in and of itself is not a problem. It's refusing to learn that is the problem. And she did her homework, was all I ever ask of anyone. The 2-week suspension, that's some corporate nonsense. They're like, let's just make sure they do a lot of rubber stamping of all sorts of things. Let's just make sure we're good. 2-week suspension and knock that out. And I hope that this just dies out and rolls over. Can I say that it was wrong for them to suspend her? I can't necessarily say that, because if she was on the other foot and somebody else had earnestly misspoken about the black race, say they had somebody on from Europe who didn't understand
Tucker
Black
Carlson.
American, they spoke poorly, we'd be calling for next. So I will give the NBC or whoever that grace of, they did what they needed to do. They made it a slap on the wrist. We'd be mad if somebody else said something weird and they got 2 weeks suspension. We'd be like, I want them fired. So I'm cool with what has happened, but I do hope that this dies down, because I don't think it needs to drag out. But I do appreciate her apology, because she did speak wrong. And another thing is, I'm not going to get into what about them other crazy people, because just because other folks do something crazy doesn't mean I'm going to allow my people to do something crazy. I don't play that.
I know Sharon is champing at the bit because I know she has some very strong opinions from the black women's perspective about Whoopi's interaction with the larger community and what the consequences have been. What do you have to say about this, Sharon?
First, I really appreciate how all of you have contextualized the argument, right? I feel in 100% agreement in the historical misstep, right? I feel a kindred spirit with you, Chuck, when you said the difference between our more domestic viewpoint and vantage point, which her faux pas was in the truest definition of ignorant, right?
Yeah.
Ignorant simply means not knowing, right? And as loaded as it sounds, and we've made it, it simply means not knowing, right? She threw herself into it. She, Joyce said it best. The apology was the sincerity. The fact that, now, let me take you all down my anger. We are in a moment in time where folks are coming for the Jewish community like gangbusters, starting all the way back to Charlottesville. You will not replace us, right?
Jews will not replace us.
Jews will not, thank you. Jews, but they were talking about Jews, but thank you. And from that period, it has continued to escalate, right? But they've also been punching at clouds because they haven't been able to reach any type of punitive actions against anyone to date, right? The right wing has taken all kind of cheap shots. There's been nobody suspended. There's been nobody fired for the tropes. They've just been called out, right? And to me, it's like a community that's felt it's fallen on deaf ears. So now you can reach out and touch somebody that you have access to. And I feel like the way this week has gone, to where we started the week talking about the Supreme Court justice, it's been Whoopi Goldberg 24/7, right? Now Brian's getting a little bit of airtime, but Whoopi's stuff has not even died down, not even a little bit. So the challenges that I have after, the sincerest apologies, I have to sit back and I think about Bill Maher.
Mm.
And I think about Joy sitting right next to her. And the Freudian things that come out her mouth all the time.
Mm-hmm.
All the time. She made a flippant comment the other day about somebody saying something ignorant that they were speaking Spanish. And Anna Navarro was like, "Excuse me?" And that was just her way of being cute, saying they were speaking in a foreign tongue. But she said speaking Spanish. Flew out. Anna snapped her check right there on the stage. She was like, "Whatever." This was last week. Okay. And let's be clear, the name of the show is called The View. The View. It's about a group of women sharing their viewpoints. Now, check me, correct me. Then she apologized. But then the said community decides to get punitive. The very trope that they like to call people out on is all about the Benjamins, right?
Mm-hmm.
You decided that you had to go after her Benjamins.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not using a trope. That's exactly what y'all did. So save me with that bullshit, right? Save me with the president of the network being a sister, putting her up to being the one to put her on suspension, right? After Color Purple came out of my head. Massa, please don't beat me, Massa. I'm sorry, Massa. I'm sorry, Massa. I didn't mean to do it. I swear I didn't mean to do it.
Yeah.
Well, you got to take the lashes, boo. I hear you. Just stop all that. I'm sorry. And you still gonna beat me? I swear that's all that's been going through my head all week.
Mine too.
Because I can't escape Tucker Carlson. I can't escape that motherfucking Bill Maher, who does racist shit every single week for the last year or two. And I was a diehard fan, but I can't stand to turn him on now. I mean, diehard, rode hard for him. So when I think about all of these people who have had zero repercussions, send her hate mail, do what you do, right? Do what you do. Come after them. Even Netflix didn't take none of Chappelle money. Right. So everybody that has a problem with it deserves to clap back. But when I think about the amount of clapback, punishment fit the crime to what society has been letting go, it's like we can't get to Tucker Carlson. We can't get to Bill Maher. Seriously? We can't get to, we're talking about a misstep that was owned up, that already went into curing, and then you have the audacity to say, go think about it. They buoyed her. Okay? They buoyed her. Go sit down somewhere, boy.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's the blood behind these eyes. That's all. I can't get it out of my system. I hear the corporate stuff. I hear all of that. But in today's society, on all the stuff that has gone by, that people are tired of being tired, and we can't shut these mofos up. Even look what they talking about Black women in the Supreme Court. We don't want somebody that go reading J. Crew, and I can't get no congressperson suspended. So I think there was no malicious intent in what she said. She was simply ignorant. Yeah. And I'm not giving her a pass for that. But to turn that into, you need to go and reflect.
Yeah.
And let me take them checks for 2 weeks.
But just to be clear, she's still being paid.
I hope so. I need to see it.
And I think, one thing. It's not over. And one of the things that's very interesting, because people in the chat, our Sharpies, have been bringing up Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson to Carol Son. But let's be absolutely clear.
Right.
Let's be super duper clear. That is their mission. That is a feature, not a bug. Joe Rogan is getting paid $100 million to be younger Rush Limbaugh.
Mm-hmm.
And Tucker is being paid whatever it is that he's being paid, tens of millions of dollars, almost certainly, to be bow-tied Rush Limbaugh. Because Rush is gone. And Sean Hannity isn't sexy anymore. Sean Hannity
That's
isn't
real key to
extreme
me.
enough. And I don't know if the rest of the Sharpies, probably the Sharpies more so than some of our younger participants, there was a time when Tucker Carlson was just an annoying bow-tied person.
Right.
He
I
wasn't
used to watch all the
batshit
time.
crazy. He was on Crossfire, and he was the
Right.
contrarian, and he would sit there with a progressive voice or whatever, and they kind of go back and forth, and it was that kind of energy where you wanted conflict because that's what it was about. It was about right, left, battling together, the tournament of ideas, and da 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 da. That's not what Tucker Carlson is now. Tucker Carlson is literally, and the irony of this is staggering to me. For people who in one breath proclaim socialism as the number one evil in the world, Tucker Carlson this week is saying that Vladimir Putin and Russia, they're only trying to protect their borders.
Yeah.
What's so wrong with Russia? What's so wrong with a country that 30 years ago was the largest communist country in the world?
Hello.
Was the inspiration of that gave us Mao, was the inspiration that gave us Fidel Castro, was the inspiration that gave us Venezuela and everybody else. Yeah. That is Russia. And now today, the former head of the KGB, who has installed himself as leader for life, the most anti-democratic thing that is possible on the planet, with fake elections, who's only, I mean, you have to think, the KGB, the head of the KGB's whole entire mission was to sow discord in the United States to take us down as a superpower. And all of a sudden, this dude, who is now not president for life, not prime minister, whatever his little position is that he has given himself, that he is never going to be removed from, which is what Trump was really wanting. That's why Trump was cradling Putin's balls, because that's what he wanted for himself. And you can see in what Trump has been doing in terms of the three different divisions of government that he sought input on whether or not he could seize voting machines. That's exactly where we were headed. We were headed to Russia, authoritarian Russia, and yet Tucker Carlson is in here. All he wants to do is protect his border from our allies in Europe. Are you kidding me? They broke up the USSR because they were a cannibalistic culture that was taking over sovereign nations and putting them under their thumb. And here's Tucker Carlson talking about that. That's okay. All they want to do is, he's not so bad. Just going against his own countrymen.
Yeah.
And I know that I segued onto this because I mentioned Trump, and I didn't mean to do that. But inasmuch as Trump and shredding documents is the actual cover image for this episode, I do want to dance onto that just briefly, because if you want to talk about how petty someone can be, and you want to talk about how much a person was scared that their dirt was going to be brought to light, it came up this week from the National Archive that when Trump turned over his legally mandated documents, scores of records that he was legally obligated to turn over, private email server, lock her up, he shredded the documents. And they have some folks at the National Archives piecing together the documents for the January 6th Select Committee. So you were right, though, right? Pence had the right to do it, right? So how come you shredding stuff?
Right.
The last time there was that much shredding, it was the hostage crisis in Iran, where they were trying to shred all the documents so that people couldn't tell who they were. And I saw Argo, and I saw they had those little Muslim sisters sitting there stripping stuff together. That is what is happening in this country today, because Trump is that scared. So let's be clear. It is not just about black women who are being under fire. It's about democracy being under fire. And when we cannot defend as progressives, because everybody's not necessarily a Democrat, but if you are an American, the idea that you have the right-wing talking head community defending Putin right now, I know Ronald Reagan is turning over in his grave.
Absolutely.
Tear down that wall
Hmm.
and then invade Crimea?
Hmm.
Are you kidding me?
Right.
And this is where we have come. And you know who we don't hear? That we don't hear Ted Cruz in enhanced intelligentsia of the right. You don't hear any of the people that in the 90s would have been the leading voices of
Right.
the conservative movement. You don't hear none of that. I mean, Bill Kristol is tweeting,
Yeah.
but you don't hear anybody coming out. Lindsey Graham tried to say that it's not a good idea to pardon insurrectionists, and within 24 hours, Trump was on air pantsing him,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yes, he
Well, you
was.
see
spanking
what
his
Pence
lily
did
white
today.
behind.
Pence, they have dropped the gauntlet.
Oh yeah,
Pence, Pence is like, I'm about to take you on.
yeah, because Pence knows he ain't
I'm
on the
here
ticket
for it.
in 2024. There's no chance it's gonna be Pence. I don't know if he tried something as silly as trying to put Marjorie Taylor Greene on there, but it's certainly not going to be Cruz. But he'll be. I am confident that he is not actually going to run. So
I
I'm gonna
mean,
leave that alone.
every empire in the history of the world has been destroyed from within.
Yep,
Hmm.
Speaking,
there it
sister.
is.
Speak it.
That's why I have guns.
And it's funny. During the first week of law school at the University of Florida, when we were doing like whole orientation bit, right? And so they were trying to, through the Socratic method, get us thinking like how lawyers are supposed to think, right? And one of the things that stood out to me was I had a professor, Stuart Cohn, and he was a jurisprudence professor down there at UF. And one of the comments that he made that has stuck with me for almost 27, 28 years now was the basically saying that, the whole, he had a paraphrase of the we have a democracy or we have a republic if we can keep it type of deal.
Hmm.
And so what he was basically saying to us is that what we consider to be the law really is only the law if we agree to make it
Right.
so. So at any point in time that you get a significant number of Americans who are like, whatever, remember, sometimes I don't think we actually dig deeply enough into this. And I saw where Stacy was making some comments about this in the thread too, Stacy LaCroix. But what's interesting to me is at the end of the doggone day, there was a whole civil war that was fought. And I know we know about that. We all studied it. We talk about it from time to time. But think about it. For 4 years, white folks fought here in the United States of America. More people died during that 4 year conflict than any other period of time in American
Mhm.
history. They were slaughtering each other because one set of people was trying to interpret the law the way they wanted
Hmm.
to be, states' rights to own slaves, and another was like, no, uh, you individual states don't have the right to do this if the national sentiment is moving toward abolition. And so when you stop and think that damn near a million white folks and black folks too, because quite a few black soldiers eventually, once they started allowing us to fight, fought and died as well. But it was mostly white folks. They killed each other, slaughtered each other, burned each other's houses down to the ground. It was crazy. So there is precedent for the foolishness that we're dealing with. And Sharon, I don't know if you saw it, but earlier today here in Tallahassee, the Democrat was reporting that one of these fringe neo-Nazi, neo-Confederate groups right here in Tallahassee, drilling out by Lafayette Park, push-ups, sit-ups, drilling for who. And I'm like, wow, these dudes ought to go and join the army and really fight if
They
they
can't. They can't pass a psyche
no,
valve.
right. But there's precedent for this, y'all, and it's frightening. I'm not so sure where this
There
thing.
is precedence for this.
Yeah,
And we
Right.
need to start accepting that we no longer live in a civilized society.
yeah,
No.
Nope.
yeah.
I had my nervous breakdown in November of 2016 when I was like, holy shit, this is the end. It's over. This grand experiment is done. Let me go get me a Mossberg and a couple of Remingtons and a Springfield Armory. And I have them all because I feel sooner or later these white folks will lose their shit. And when they figure out that their cool, rich friends have abandoned them, they're going to turn on whatever's close that they can target from a distance, which means people that don't look like them. Come over here if you want to. That's why I always live in the city You have to get through the hood to get to me. And I'm going to be supplying the hood with whatever I can give them to help fortify our defenses. Because I ain't playing with you crazy people. Um, I'm not the one, and I will never be. And
But
I've
you know what?
already planned my Armageddon strategy, but y'all think I may be intelligent and I may be sounding paranoid, but just because you're paranoid don't mean they ain't out to get you.
I
They
mean,
didn't burn the city of Atlanta down many, many times.
okay.
It's just a matter. This country didn't make it 100 years without trying to tear itself apart. We founded in 1776, 1861, Civil War, right? So, and then we've been trying to kill each other ever since. We hate each other. We hate ourselves as a country,
Mhm.
and simultaneously beating our chest like we're the best, but not believing it. We are a mess. We're a
Mhm.
collective mess. And it's not too much long from now that people of color, all ethnicities, will more than likely be declared insurgents of some sort and put on a watch list of some sort. If you ever put a hashtag Black Lives Matter on any social media, they'll be able to gather all that together and freeze your accounts and fuck you over. I'm telling you, just get your shit together. I'm just saying.
But you know, Joy, the irony of this moment when Chuck broke down the history is people are getting educated through this controversy on what the
But I
history
just
looked
told
like.
you half the country is on an eighth grade reading level.
Yeah, no, well, I'm talking about people who thinking that we're in a civilized state. Those have already checked out. They the ones in Lafayette Park that Chuck is talking about, right? The
Mhm.
rest of us are still kind of believing, it's just COVID. There's room to come back to normalcy. And when you really had to, and those in the environments understand Whoopi's faux pas
Mhm.
and had the opportunity to hear the historical context and the juxtaposition, you realize that it's not far fetched to what we're experiencing right now, particularly January 6th, right? And what has is transpiring since then. And I will say even before that from Charlottesville and everything that's going on since then. And the tyranny has been unleashed, right?
Mhm.
And it's just coming out in little spurts.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just your readiness is not comedy, right? It's not. It's a clarion call that a lot of people need to start thinking about if they're not already there.
And
You know,
what, Sharon? Okay. One of the things that all right. One of the things that's interesting to me also is before we go too far away from Miss Goldberg, um, I'm almost of the opinion that I was hoping that she would say fuck ABC and not come back. And I'm going to tell you why. It's obviously I assume that she's well off, but you never know. I mean, I assume it. She's had a wonderful acting career, comedian and what have you.
she's an
I,
EGOT.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know,
Yes.
but what where I struggle is that in this new media world, right? And as Black people, I hope all of our listeners, Black and white, listen. But for Black people, we have to do a better job of supporting each other when we get in these pickles. See, if we really supported each other, uh, Ms. Goldberg could start her own podcast, and we'd be signing up. Maybe she get some of her girlfriends or guy friends or whatever that can sit and do the View, very similar to what we're doing here with Steel Sharp and Steel, right? But we're so quick to pay the Netflix fee or the Hulu fee or all of the other fees, but not all of us are willing to actually pay $2-3 a month to support Black-owned media. Ms. Goldberg should have been able to tell ABC to go fuck themselves with the suspension the other day. Like, hey, I've apologized, going back to what Sharon said, and I ain't about to apologize no goddamn more. Now that's how Chuck Hobbs would have done it. I'd have been like, man, fuck y'all. I got my own shit. And I'm not whistling Dixie. I did it with The Hill 5 years ago. I told them to go fuck themselves and started observation point. Straight up. All right. So the point that I'm making though is I'm grateful for all of y'all. All of y'all have signed up. Y'all are good paying observation point people. And I'm much obliged to each of you for that and all of you who are. But at the end of the day, we should always be doing that. looking out for each other to the point where we don't have to go beg massa to be on their goddamn platform. And I'm sorry for the profanity, but it's just frustrating to me that we can't prop each other up like that, because she shouldn't have to go and kiss their ass about their station. She made a mistake.
I honestly had a dream last night that she's sitting up with Oprah and Magic and Tyler Perry right now
Yeah,
having a conversation, right? Because I told y'all I'm emancipated. That's why
yeah.
I said sometimes y'all just gonna have to like, okay, distance yourself if you have to, because I refuse to believe that we are where we are at this moment, right?
Do
And
that,
that
Tom.
we don't have, I think Jay-Z, you know, again, Magic, Whoopi, Tyler Perry, Oprah needs to be sitting around talking about how do we create a view on our own terms,
Thank you.
right? Because that decision was not made by anybody that looks like us, right? But they had, and to me, it's the assault. It's the juxtaposition. I that's why I called out specifically Bill Maher, Joy Behar, and McCain are sitting right next to her. I'm not trying to deal with the untouchables, as Tom said, who are paid to act the ass, right? I'm talking about people that are supposedly progressives and or supposedly on the right side. Smerconish broke it down so beautifully today, just
Hmm.
beautifully. But it goes back to how you gonna make this punitive, like as if she elbowed somebody or she did a sucker punch and punched out the ref, right?
Right.
When there was no malintent that required the actions of somebody expressing their viewpoint and then saying I was ill spoken. She wasn't coming at somebody calling them the N word. She wasn't, or any of the flavorful words that we do. It's that's what has me so incensed, right? It was a learned mistake.
Hmm.
Mhm.
It was not somebody throwing blows and attempting to be malicious.
Uh, I think this has been a remarkable conversation. This is exactly why so many of you tune in to Steel Sharpen Steel to get the sort of informed perspective. And if ABC or any other syndicators are interested, we are all here every Friday, and we are happy to give you an option if you decide you need to pivot and move on. That goes for BET. It also goes for TV1. It also goes for the OWN network,
Peacock.
Bounce. Somebody holding a cell phone in front of their TV right now, recording us. We are
Issa,
here.
Issa Rae.
Issa
Holla at
Rae, hello. Issa, hi. Hi.
you. Root for
Prentice
everybody
Penny.
black, right?
Exactly. Root for everybody black. Root for everybody on this screen right now. But I would like to turn things in a slightly different direction because we are celebrating Black History Month. This is our first Black History Month show. And since we're in the midst, we're at the end of a segment about black women and shining a spotlight on black women. I would like to shine the spotlight on a particular young black woman who made a lot of waves during the inauguration of Joe Biden, and that is Amanda Gorman. And this young woman is being translated into a number of languages. Her poetry is being translated. She is an incredible young figure. And we talked about the Roma, the Hungarian Roma, a little bit earlier when we were having our Holocaust discussion. And they have taken it upon themselves
Mhm.
to begin translating her work into their native tongue so that they can continue to spread the word about her brilliance and the way that she communicates the wonderful themes that she does. And I went and found another picture because this little princess is
Queen.
my black queen, and you look at that crown
Yeah, yeah.
and she is holding up the bottom of her, that's that little thing that she's kind of pinching her little fingers there, that is holding up the train of this dress. And when you look at this beautiful young woman and you consider what she has achieved, she is the embodiment of not only Black history, but Black excellence in this moment, in this month, and throughout the rest of the year. So I just want to make sure that we properly recognize and give our due props to the incredible Amanda Gorman for everything that she has contributed to our lives. It's been just over a year since she emerged onto the world stage. And,
With a bang.
she is doing her thing. And so we really appreciate you, Amanda, and we are duly impressed and humbled by the way that you have shone so brightly.
Absolutely.
And just for a note, for those who may not understand why that's such a big deal for Hungarian Roma to have her poems translated into their language, they mimic the Black experience very much so. A word that you might be more familiar with, but that is actually a slur according to how they like to be identified. Gypsy is what they used to be called a lot, but that is not what they want to be called. They are Roma or Romani. And right now, if a Roma person is beaten by the cops in London, the cops won't believe them. They suffer police brutality at a rate of 3 to 5 times the rate of other nationalities, except Black, in UK and in the broader Western European sphere. And so they feel us and they feel our pain of not belonging anywhere, but being everywhere and being invisible, but contributing and being unheard. So that's why it's such a big deal for them. And that's why her poetry speaks to them, because they feel like she's speaking for them too.
Amen.
And she is just simply a remarkable young woman, and in an era where we are now being celebrated, I think less than the way that she should, but Maya Angelou being honored as the first recognized Black woman to appear on coins. There's been some historical research which points to the fact that the famous Walking Liberty coin, which was designed by Gaudens, actually is an image of a Black woman. So, but she was not recognized as such. And so Maya Angelou is one of the 5 quarters recognizing women, and those quarters should be available now. So go on ahead and snatch them up, even though I don't think that likeness really captures the magnificence of Maya Angelou. But Amanda Gorman is spiritually stepping into the breach to inherit that legacy, and it is clear that there's so much laying ahead. Now, it is a byproduct of Black history, because in this country, a lot of our history is littered with racism. And so just as we go into Black History Month, the other scandal that is probably at the top of many of your feeds is this Brian Flores lawsuit. Oh, wow. Wait, bring that back up real quick, because I like that roll of quarters that was purchased for
Nice,
that's dope. I really like that. One of 6, by the way. I know why the Cage Bird Sings is like the one that a lot of people gravitate to, but there were 6 memoirs in her her set of autobiographies. So Brian Flores, as for those of you who might not be familiar, Brian Flores is a coach who had been released, and he was under consideration for a new job. And Bill Belichick, with his thick thumb and fingered ass, was in a text conversation where he was telling Brian Flores, he was telling Brian that hey, congratulations, you got the new coaching gig. And he was like, oh, for real? Because I'm interviewing next week. And he was like, no, man, it's you. And he was like, are you sure you're not texting Brian? Is it Blodell?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. And he's like,
White Brian.
oh, snap. My bad. So, yeah, I think they're probably giving it to him. Mm-hmm. This is less than a week before he had even interviewed. And then lo and behold, the interview happens, and they announce that the white Brian got the gig. And so Brian Flores is now in the midst of a lawsuit against the NFL for collusion and racist practices and this, that, and the third, and all of that. And so I guess since this is football, I guess it's supposed to be just you and me, Chuck, for
We
a
got,
few moments.
we
But
got it. We got yo
so
yo.
why don't you weigh in? Because I know that you're much more an aficionado of these teams that I am not a fan of. So why
Yeah,
don't you take it away?
yeah, man. Noop is very interesting. You know, it's the same old deal that we've been dealing with for years. Many of our followers are probably aware of the Rooney Rule, which was named for Dan Rooney, longtime owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And basically, that came about in the early 2000s when Tony Dungy and I can't believe remember who this. It might have been Marvin Lewis, but two black coaches got fired like in the same day back in the early 2000s. And so the big concern started becoming, hey, what can we do to increase the number of black men who are not only coaches but also on the that are also on the general managers and front office positions. So essentially, what has happened here, y'all, is that Brian Flores is suing, saying that not only was his interview with the New York Giants a sham, he's also indicating that 3 years ago when he interviewed with the Denver Broncos, that was a sham also. And that turned very interesting earlier today because longtime Denver Bronco quarterback and team leader John Elway clapped back, says that he felt that Brian Flores had impugned his character, said that because what Flores said in the lawsuit, y'all, is that John Elway and several other team muckety mucks, when they interviewed him 3 years ago, came to the interview drunk
Mm.
and hung over, disheveled, things of that nature. John Elway came back today, said, no, we weren't drunk or disheveled. We were just tired because we had worked all day the day before and then flown on a red eye to Miami and were meeting with him early in the morning, right? So it's going to get really good once the discovery starts. I don't think this case will ever see a trial. The NFL at some point in time, I really believe, will try to throw some money at him to settle it because this is a situation where that young man has all the receipts, like the people, like folks like to say these days. It's definitely the ball is in his court. I know that's basketball euphemism, but still, it's going to be interesting to watch what goes on. But you know, up in the threads, I don't know which one of the Sharpies made the comment, but at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, just like we were talking earlier about Ms. Goldberg and whether should shoot the middle fingers at ABC or not. At what point in time do we chuck the deuces or shoot the bird at the NFL too? Now I know some of us have. Some of us have been either real disciplined with the boycott ever since they did what they did to new Colin Kaepernick, or at a minimum, or at a minimum, just not like used to be. But for the most part, I'm not gonna lie, y'all. On any given Sunday, Saturday, Monday night, my timeline is still filled with a whole lot of brothers and sisters that are
Hell
talking
yeah.
about, them my Cowboys, them my Redskins.
Mhm.
I'm a 49er for life. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, how do we make change if they know that they can have 6 vacancies at the end of the season this year, 6, and not nan one is filled by a black coach? I mean, at what else? What more must we do to be able to drive the point home to them? I don't know. I'm at a loss.
What's up with the USFL?
Right, that's the new. It's the old new
The
league.
old recycled, yeah.
Cycle league that's coming back.
I
I
mean,
say we go run that.
according to Ted
Yeah.
Cruz, maybe they should hire a black female coach. It's about time.
I
Right.
I mean, for the 6%, I'm just saying.
Hmm?
Um, uh, and I have been one of those disciplined person. I can honestly say the only time I have watched a football game was when I was in a bar and it was inescapable. Because it was on because I'm at the bar and it's happy hour and it's football night and the entire bar is watching it. And so if you turn to go ask for another drink, it's football on the TV.
Yeah.
And I have to say the snippets that I have seen, this postseason has been absolutely incredible. Now, I don't know if the Super Bowl is going to measure up because the last 2 weeks of games have just been absolutely incredible. Just even I saw the last 13 seconds that allowed the Chiefs to win, and I also saw when the Chiefs lost.
But somebody in the chat asked a good question. Like, where is Jay
Yeah,
Z in all of this? What happened? He was all yucking it up with Goodell back in the day. He's got this, blackety black halftime shows
Ha
because
ha!
the non-melanated shows wasn't getting no views.
Mm-hmm.
And this one is like all West Coast Dr. Dre down. Like the
Oh yeah.
promo that I saw for it almost made me want to watch it. Then I remember who I was, and I was like, no, there's got to be something on Netflix.
yeah.
But
He went real yes or massa on that a couple years ago, and I'm a Jay Z fan, so it don't come for me. I've always liked Jay. I can spit his lyrics just as well as any of the rest of you. But I was very disappointed in him a few years ago with that stance, with that we're beyond kneeling. No, we're not beyond kneeling.
No, you absolutely are not.
Yeah, yeah. And you were sitting here on some yes or massa, even though you're always talking about your billions of dollars and what have you. If you a real billionaire or if you got real freedom, you're not sitting there yes or massa and whatever you say, Captain Boss. I was very disappointed in that stance, to tell you the truth.
Well,
Chan,
and what you not what Ja Rule got to touch.
Oh man.
I, Ja Rule would have to say something with Ashanti backing him. I think is probably what would I be with my baby? Something.
Now, this actually is an expert speaking. This is James Herndon. He is the leader of a podcast called Next Fan Up.
Okay.
And he says that Jay Z only contributes to the entertainment part of the NFL and has no input or voice in anything dealing with actual football or its operations. So that yes or massa, that shucking and
Yeah.
jiving, that's what he actually is there to do.
Gotcha. Well, there.
It's Hove. Ha ha.
Right?
Yeah.
One of the
Let me introduce
things.
myself. My name is Cool. Sorry. I'm sorry. Beyonce's internet don't come from me.
Right.
One of the
drinking.
reasons
They come
that we
from
still
drinking.
have to kneel is that we and all four of us, in case anybody is brand new to the show tonight, we have four HBCU alums on this show. We have two Rattlers, a Morehouse man, and a Spelman woman. And so when our HBCUs, our beloved institutions, came under a rash of bomb threats in the last week, we were rightfully concerned. Now, I don't know how, if I ever felt that I thought that the bomb threats were actually real, but it was concerning that they were disruptive and were attempting in Black History Month to assault these institutions where so many of our brilliant luminaries emerged. And I was very happy to hear that the FBI finally caught up with some kids who probably thought that they were going to Netflix and chill right into their post high school life, but they tracked down these kids, and so 6 of them have been identified as persons of interest in the bomb threat, and they have been, our HBCUs, among other things, don't have all of the resources in the world. So in addition to the fact that there's just a terroristic threat of threatening the lives of students, the physical manpower that it took to start going building by building, room by room, starting in dorms to make sure that kids wouldn't be killed while they slept, it taxed institutions that
Hundreds of
can
thousands of
barely,
dollars
oh,
across
obviously, of man hours and everything else. And Joy, your institution was one that was specifically targeted. Was there any discussion in the various alumni groups that were addressing it, and how did you feel that being in your town, being so close to what could have been a disaster?
Well, here's the thing, specifically about Spelman. Spelman is part of the Atlanta University Center. So depending on where you put something, if you put an incendiary device, you're hitting Spelman, Morehouse, and Clark.
Mm-hmm.
The fallout is going to be across 3 different campuses, and Morris Brown too, 4 different campuses, and ITC. There's 5 different campuses, all right there that share streets. You know what I'm saying? So you're not necessarily going to just hit one. And I know in the chat groups that I was in, people were living. Not to mention, I'm of an age where we got kids that are going to our alma mater now, and so people are very afraid for their children. And so you reach that point where you're like, do I pull my kid out, or do I understand that this is the cost of living in America right now and leave them to get the education I want them to have. So it's safety versus legacy.
Mhm.
And then do I take it seriously? Or is this all just a hoax? So there's a whole lot of questioning, but it does damage um, not the trust that we have in the institution, but the trust we have in the safety of the institution. And so, but then it comes down to, do you run the risk of maybe a bomb going off at a certain school, or put your kid in a place where their whole psychological sense of self is going to be damaged at a
Right.
where they could get arrested for sleeping in a dorm?
Yeah.
Well, Yale
Right.
in a study room
Mm-hmm.
called out because a Karen feels, and I saw something on it's a word that I would never use, but I saw a TikTok about a person who said don't call them Karens,
Mm-hmm.
and the word that she substituted with a hard fricative K sound, um, a grown up word. I just felt it's not something I can say,
Yeah,
but
we're not doing that.
I felt it because the way this person, and she had a tall boy of some malt liquor or something, and she did not look like a person who've been advocating strongly against Karens, but I watched it 3 times in a row. But speaking of things that white people can do that black people can't, Joy, do you have something for us?
Yes, if we're trying to call a spade and a saltine a saltine, then you have to remember, you think about what is that white people can do that black people can't. There is one thing, and I think that this young lady put it very well.
What can white people do that black people can't?
Use a political rally as a smokescreen to execute a plan to gather by the thousands, forcibly enter a federal building with threats of maiming or murdering elected officials, going through their offices, rifling through their paperwork, smearing shit on the walls, bypassing democracy in order to overthrow the government. All of this with one casualty, one loss of life, and having people with power on the inside that can steer the investigation to ensure that the perpetrators get away with it.
What she said.
And I know y'all noticed that slow aggressive push.
She put a Sharon on y'all.
Pull that Sharon. Yeah.
She was full Sharoning, just in a slow dedication
Yes, she was.
to the camera, and let y'all people know. And you these sorts of memes that break out on TikTok, it's just like, it's funny. You see all the different people responding to the questions, but then you get a sister like that, and she had crafted that, and that she had every single word emblazoned in her mind hole space so that she could deliver that with that searing intensity and not take a breath and not pause at all and not miss a syllable and push and push and push. And you felt that. I know y'all felt it.
Right, Miss Jones, we salute you. I'm digging it. I am digging your message, and I agree with you, and I support your platform, and here's to you.
Here is to you.
Now, I've been drinking since 10 a.m., but here's to you.
All right.
We brought up the issue of Jay-Z talking about we're past kneeling, and I think that we are absolutely not, because just this week, the police officer, former officer, who murdered Laquan McDonald, walked out of prison in a shorter period of time than the young man who was incarcerated and held, what was it, at Rikers for a backpack?
Khalif Browder.
Khalif Browder was in custody longer than Jason Van Dyke.
Mm-hmm.
And Jay-Z, who produced a documentary about Khalif Browder, is sitting here talking about we don't have to kneel no more. Really,
Yeah.
Jay? Really? Because Laquan McDonald was murdered, and he got additional charges for every shot, every bullet that Van Dyke fired into McDonald, and he still got out.
Well, because they sentenced him on the most heinous crime, which was the attempted murder, not on the multiple assault charges.
Exactly. So, and it ended up, I think it was manslaughter, wasn't it? It wasn't even attempted murder because it was successful murder. So I think
Yeah.
I
So
think he got second degree manslaughter, and they
yeah,
ignored everything else, and they didn't add extenuating circumstances because they didn't go for hate crime, blah 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 blah.
but if they had done the assault charges, those cumulatively would have been more
Exactly, would
time.
have been more. It would have been more time because in the each individual assault charge was like 5 years or something. So 5 times 16, blah blah blah. You have math, just like Ted Cruz.
How
And there
insane do
was
you have to
another
be?
police killing in Minneapolis, and
Of a
we
young man sleeping on a couch. Minneapolis, can I ask you to stop? Can I
I
ask you
cannot
to please
believe it was
stop
them
assaulting
again.
black men?
Yeah.
they're not gonna do that. They're the
I
most
just could
murderous.
not believe that
Another
they did it
no-knock
again.
warrant. And this was not even a door kick where it's a loud boom and an entrance. They effectively picked
It
the
had a
lock to
key.
enter silently
They broke
and then
in,
said police. And dude was asleep, licensed to carry.
and he wasn't even the right dude.
Oh, that wasn't even the guy they were looking for?
No,
No.
Oh, Lord Jesus.
That's like Botham Jean out there in well, no, not
in
quite.
Dallas.
That's like
Well, no, Botham John was just mistaken. I mean,
Yeah.
that was just
Mistaken,
her
yeah.
being whatever.
That was
Thank you, Phil.
Breonna Taylor.
I mean, it's more analogous to Breonna Taylor. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
Minneapolis, you just need to stop.
Yeah.
You need to stop. Go purify yourself in the sacred waters of Lake Minnetonka or something. You've got to stop killing black men in your city. It's
So if you
ridiculous.
remember, Ilhan Omar talked about this well before the death of George Floyd, and they called her a terrorist.
Yeah, they
They
did.
said she had Al Qaeda leanings. They said that she was a sympathizer for ISIS, etc. All to not listen to her. Meanwhile, they steady murdering black men left and right, and they continue to do it while she continues to get death threats to this day.
Well, let's be clear. Not only death threats, but threats by her congressional colleagues. I'm not even sure at this point if
Yeah.
it was Congress Critter Green or if it was Lauren No Brain.
Yeah.
But she
Lauren
got on the
Sullivan
elevator
Green.
and made that little slick comment out the side of her neck, wondering where Ilhan Omar, Representative Ilhan Omar's allegiances lie. We are in crazy, crazy times, Sharpies. We are in absolutely crazy times, and the
Unless
only
there
thing that
is a mind shift by a critical mass of the majority, we are watching the end of an empire.
we are, and people think, these people are talking about, oh, there's going to have to be bloodshed to such and such and such and such. If there is bloodshed initiated by the right wing, it is for tyranny, not against tyranny. Because the person you're holding up as your standard bearer is absolutely a tyrant in training, absolutely trying to ensure that the next election is falsified, unless he doesn't run, because he certainly doesn't want to see DeSantis in the presidency. He absolutely doesn't want to see that, because that's a creature of his own making, and to be unseated by his progeny, that's some old David and Absalom stuff.
You know how vindictive he is. Pence
Oh yeah.
made sure he was running today.
Oh well, yeah,
He
maybe.
ain't gonna let any of that go slide. He just wait this weekend. You'll see crazy. He can't make it through the whole weekend silent.
No,
It's
absolutely.
not
he
within his
cannot.
ability.
And while we're talking about injustices against black men, last week we did talk about how there was a plea agreement, and the family of Ahmaud Arbery was disgusted with the prospect that they might be able to serve 30 years of their life sentence plus 30 in federal prison, which almost would certainly take Daddy McMichael off the map, but would put Travis in a much cozier circumstance than he would experience in Georgia State Prison. And thankfully, the judge said, nah, with
Nah,
those
son.
plea deals. Nah, son, with those plea deals, and took them off the table, which resulted, of course, in the revocation of the guilty plea because they weren't going to get what they thought they were going to get. And now, at least George has explicitly entered a not guilty plea, and one presumes that his son has followed suit. Now, where Roddy Bryan is and all this, I don't know if if he even cares at this point. I don't know why any of them would care. Prison's going to be prison. You're not getting out. There's no parole except for Roddy. So I don't even know why we even went through the motions of going after the hate crime stuff. And I get it. People say, oh, but you had to make an example, blah, 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 blah. I don't need that example. I need them to sit in a horrible jail with black inmates for the rest of their lives. That's what I want. I don't need a federal tick on a box. I don't need anything. I need Tyrone.
I want
And-
Adebisi
Right.
come holler at them.
Get that little hat. Little Adebisi hat.
All of that.
Yeah, I need all
I want
of
the
that.
Booty Warrior from Boondocks. I want all of that. Yes,
Boondocks,
I'm
which
advocating violence against these men.
I am. Yeah,
I
I'm just
exactly what I'm saying.
I'm advocating justice for these men is what I'm advocating.
Street justice, but justice nonetheless.
Justice. And so what I would say is that, and Chuck has had to leave us. He had a previous engagement. Yeah, you gonna eat your cornbread. So we just want for the justice train to continue to roll, and I have no problem if it continues to roll over both McMichael's and Roddy's backs. I'm good with that. And I'm glad that you rescinded that plea. And guess what? Just because you don't get convicted on the federal charges doesn't mean you're out. So how about that?
Right.
And the fact that they excluded all of the racist stuff that's finna come out in the federal hate crimes thing, you don't even have that leg to stand on. Prejudicial and
behind.
You really should have. You really should have said, "Oh, okay," because it was gonna be concurrent. It wasn't like they were gonna tack another 30 years beyond the 30 years beyond the life you already got. You were going to be serving it concurrently anyway. So why not just like the meme? Why not just take the time and go? Take the L. Just because that's what you're left with. And I'm just pleased for the Ahmaud Arbery's family, his mother especially. His mother was beautifully outspoken about the prospect of the pleas being accepted. And it definitely, I mean, look, the DOJ, the feds, I don't know why they chose this strategy. I get that maybe they were trying to save money, whatever, but that's not how you earn your keep. You don't save money that way. And so I'm glad that it was rejected. I think the judge did the right thing. And I'm hopeful that this new federal trial is not going to be long at all, because Lord knows I don't need to see any McMichaels on my news feed for any length of time.
I want this new trial to start. I want them to get in there and be like, what? Who? Oh, hell no. Go on somewhere. And that'll be the end of the trial.
Go on down somewhere. We are near the end of our show. We are near the end of the Black Hit. Wait, go ahead, Joy. I know you're champing. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say we want to. We do like to, because we talk about a lot of heavy stuff, but I always like to keep things a little bit lighter, a little bit fun. And in the midst of all of the things that went on this week, I did come across something that I thought was hilarious, because it spoke to a reimagining of history. A reckoning in a public space, and putting a very loud white man in his place, all at the same time. We're
not doing him first, are we? We have those two other little bits, right?
We can do whichever one you want to do.
Well, Joy was very studious in acquiring some things to close out our Black History Month, and so first up in our Black History Month cavalcade of enjoyment is this gem, which comes to us to remind us all of how commercialism never actually dies, even during Black History Month.
Switch it. You need to switch
Damn it, Bill. Put the right...
What up? What is up, fam? It's Black History Month, and in celebration of you people, the black community of blacks, we will be offering some outstanding deals. That's right. Our prices will be so low, you won't have to steal. Oh, God. So what are you waiting for? Bring all the people of color to come shop with us. No cap. Is that it?
Yep, that's a wrap.
Let's do the last part again.
No.
No cap.
Oh God!
On God, it was the on God for me.
All you
Colored
people of
people of
color,
color. Our prices are so low, you won't have to steal.
still.
So we flip from that brother who is being ironic to an ally
Yes.
who was in praise of what black culture has contributed to the landscape.
White people, tell me something positive about black people.
Please forgive me if I mispronounce this word. This is not something I grew up with. This is something that I was exposed to later in life as I gained access to diversity, and I changed the way I thought about things. I'm going to do my best not to butcher this word, but I believe it's pronounced seasoning. 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 Is that right?
Seasoning, yes.
Seasoning.
Seasoning, yes.
Is that right?
I appreciate him and his cultural expansion to the seasoning.
To the seasoning. So now, Joy,
Yes.
please, to close out the show.
We will present to you. So I told you there was a Facebook post that I found, and it is by and I'll show you what's happening here. So it was a Facebook post by this man Stacy, who was talking about his time on an Amtrak train. This is Stacy, by the way, long dreads, mask on. Appreciate you, brother.
Thank you.
So
Boss
what we're
headphones.
going to do for you now is reenact, and Tom, you be the businessman. So we're going to reenact a dramatic reading, if you will, of Stacy's time on the Amtrak train and why this is just reparation, comic gold for you. So scene begins now. I'm on an Amtrak train, business class from DC to Trenton. There is a white man, Southern,
Hi, y'all.
loud,
Yep.
and important.
Ha ha.
Let's call him Chuck. I'm glad Chuck is gone. I'm about 8 rows behind him, and he's been on his cell phone since we boarded. He's talking loud, as if he's in his home office. Everyone else on the train car seems unbothered, but I'm annoyed.
Here's my cell number 703.
I write down his cell number. I dial star 67, then I 1703.
Give me a sec. Got another call coming through. Yellow.
I whisper, hello, this is Black Jesus calling. I'm riding on Northeast bound train 176.
What?
I hope y'all find the right interns for your search.
You do?
You will make it to New Brunswick in time for that team meeting.
Good to know.
I also think your pitch for the new project, with some minor adjustments, will be well received by the rest of the team. And
Thank
I
you kindly.
recommend either the Frog or the Peach or Steakhouse 85 for dinner tonight. But for right now, I'm gonna need you to lower your voice while riding this train. In my name, amen. Click. Dude actually stood up and looked around frantically, but I kept looking at my computer like I am not Black Jesus. I don't know.
Thank you, Black Jesus. Thank you, Black Jesus, for anointing.
For putting
because-
this man in his place.
we needed that anointing today.
You know what? I just love how, first off, don't be yelling your whole phone number out. And I see that so often. People just assume that their tone of voice, their inability to speak with an inside voice is acceptable. And this also, when I talk about white supremacy, assuming that you doing whatever you want is fine because of who you are.
Right.
I like that he took him down. He didn't go up and tell him to shut up. He didn't try to get into an altercation, but he hit him with, this is Black Jesus. And then knew everything about him because, of course, it never occurred to this white man that he was talking so loud.
All his business.
Right.
I mean, he gave
so
details. He gave details on
Right.
every aspect of the conversation.
Jesus is Black. You love to see it.
Phil, I think the Frog in the Peach is where we should have dinner. I mean, I just love it. You know, Sharpies, we thank you so
Okay, so
much.
Dr. Stacy Patton. So we went back and forth on whether that was male or female. I was told it was a man
Well,
with
it's
long
Stacy.
dreads.
Well, hold on. Let's because this person spells their name with an E. So I don't know if it's Dr. Stacy Patton. I just know it's there is a this Dr. Stacy Patton looks a lot thinner. Maybe I guess it could be her. I don't know. She's at Morgan State University though, so going from DC
Does
to
she have
Trenton
long
maybe.
dreads?
In some pictures she does, yes, but they don't look as thick as the ones in the
Right.
picture. Well, no, here she does.
Well, Stacy, we appreciate you.
We do appreciate you,
Yes,
Stacy. We does. And
we
thank you
do.
for giving us our Black Jesus moment to kick off Black History Month.
Yes, absolutely.
We appreciate you. And with that, Sharpies, we'd like to remind you that Steel Sharpens Steel is something that you can like and subscribe and click that notification bell so that you are made aware of every time that we go live. We certainly want to remind you, if you are so inclined, that you can support Chuck Hobbs at Substack.com. Black Sharpies Month. Come on, Stacy, with Black Sharpies Month. That's right. And we are going to continue to be here. We hope that you enjoy the show. And with that, I will say, I'm Tom Cunningham.
I am Joy Stevens.
And I am Sharon Letman Hicks.
And this is Steel Sharpens Steel.